Let's see what are they doing, because I see a lot of construction smoke going on. Oh no, they are constructing. They are taking out the whole platform where he was sitting, and they are constructing a new one, as you can see. So that's what the change is. And guess what? The killer was there, and there was a video taken from here, and that's where you see a killer running behind in the background. And I was like right here when it happened. So this is what is happening right now. I think, oh, as you can see, my boss is still there. They are taking the things inside, so I'm gonna go inside.
They said everything was handled, that the authorities were in control. They claimed there was nothing unusual about sealing the scene so swiftly, crafting the narrative so fast, or stifling the questions before they even began. But ask yourselves, since when does truth need to be rushed, hidden, or pared down before we even get a chance to see it? If there was nothing to hide, why were witnesses sidelined before being heard? Why did the first reports disappear faster than they were released? Why did the most critical minutes, those that could have revealed everything, vanish into silence before the public even knew what to ask? Some will call that protocol. Others will insist it's respect for the investigation. But if justice was truly the goal, why did those closest to the scene walk away with confusion instead of answers? Why did officials arrive before the story itself? And why were details so neatly locked down when nothing about the situation was clean? As you're tuned into this broadcast, don't forget to drop your comment. We will answer every point. We value your feedback and your contributions. We stand for justice. We stand with Charlie. Here is an uncomfortable truth. Most people looked away the moment the headlines changed. Most ceased questioning because the narrative handed to them was easier to swallow than the possibility that something deeper was wrong. And whether we admit it or not, that silence, our silence, was precisely what lets secrets endure. So before you move on like the rest of the world, pause on this question. If nothing was concealed, why does everything feel buried? What are your thoughts? Is the case moving forward cautiously, or is bureaucracy and delay slowing it down? Share your views in the comments. That's how we hear you from wherever you are. To stay on top of every development, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. This is my channel, and together we fight for justice. They claimed everything was managed before anyone even grasped what had happened. The scene was sealed, headlines were drafted, and the official version was delivered faster than the questions. But the first people there didn't walk away with answers. They walked away feeling something was being controlled, not revealed. As soon as certain figures arrived, access was cut, cameras redirected, and witnesses pushed aside. Statements were held for review, footage disappeared, and conversations ended the instant someone asked the wrong thing. Too fast, too controlled, too clean. If nothing was hidden, why were those closest to the truth mutely silenced? Why did reaction precede facts? And why did public interest die just when real questions should have begun? This isn't merely about what transpired, it's about what we were never meant to see, and how rapidly the world moved on before the truth could even breathe. Before most people realized something was off, the incident involving Charlie was quietly steered behind the scenes. And when a name so well known is involved, no response is ever casual. This did not play out in isolation. It unfolded in public with crowds, cameras, and expected security presence. Yet from the moment the shot was fired, the timeline became strangely difficult to track. Officials arrived before witnesses could speak. Early reactions were muted. Statements that should have come immediately were delayed or filtered. What makes this case impossible to overlook is not only that Charlie was targeted, but how quickly things went from chaos to silence. Witnesses recounted shock and confusion, yet officials acted as though the narrative had been preordained. Key details were withheld, footage restricted, and the public version appeared finalized before the real investigation even began. People's skepticism sprang not from too much information, but from what they saw, not matching what they were told. Once the area around Charlie was cleared, odd signs emerged. Those close enough to hear or see were pushed back without explanation, not questioned, not interviewed, just removed. Why were the individuals nearest to the scene kept at a distance rather than asked what they saw. Some were asked, but no credible answers came. Why were initial voices silenced instead of recorded? Then came the odd management of information. Reports that typically spread fast were slowed or withdrawn. Footage that should have been immediately reviewed was unavailable or held under internal review. And before the public could digest anything, officials spoke in polished, rehearsed tones as if the event had been planned. Another curious sign, those trying to document the aftermath via phones, cameras, or live streams were told to stop or step back. Some were warned, others ignored, only to find their recordings mysteriously removed later. The timeline doesn't add up. Response teams appeared almost too quickly, as though they had been staged nearby. What direction does one rush toward without knowing where to be? Then contradictions surfaced. Witnesses described what they heard one way. Officials framed it differently. Initial details about who was nearby or how the area was secured changed, vanished, or were replaced by statements that felt more like damage control than truth. None of these alone confirm anything, but together they sketch coordination more than confusion. That's when the public began to wonder, are we being informed or managed? From the start, everything suggested a response more controlled than reactive. Transparency gave way to managing perception. When Tyler Robinson's name entered the picture, the control over information became even more refined. The issue isn't just the shooting, it's that details were locked in before clarity ever arrived. Those near Charlie or close to the line of fire weren't pulled aside for immediate accounts. They were moved, redirected, or ignored. Statements that should have been recorded on the spot never were. Surrounding zones were sealed before neutral observers could analyze. Points of impact, entry routes, lines of sight were obstructed or restricted without explanation. Instead of preserving everything, access was trimmed to a controlled circle. Public updates about Robinson were pre-filtered. The tone was not investigative. It was packaged, final, delivered as though there were no loose ends, no open call for witnesses, no appeals for outside footage, no admission that early details remained uncertain. Yet what's striking is what never emerged. No official breakdown of where Robinson was when the shot was fired, no confirmation of who first identified him, no timeline of how swiftly authorities responded once Charlie was hit. Every piece that should have fallen into place in real time was tucked behind eyed briefings and vague language. Even when people attempted to share their accounts, they encountered walls. Bystander footage vanished online. Comments referencing early chaos were buried or flagged. Individuals claiming they saw Robinson moments before the incident never had follow-up. None of this aligns with open inquiry. It resembles a controlled rollout. And when control replaces urgency, one question screams out, was the aim to resolve or to limit what the public could see? As people dug deeper, inconsistencies multiplied. Once Robinson's name was tied to this, the silence around key details became harder to justify. Several witnesses reported things missing from any official account. Those close enough to hear described conflicting movements, varied security positions, unclear reactions, yet none of their reports were ever published. Some attendees recalled seeing Robinson in zones not included in any timeline. Others said they noticed him minutes before the shot, only for his name to emerge later in a different version of events. No official source addressed these mismatches. Then there's the footage. Multiple cameras were present, yet the angles released omit the most critical moments, especially just before and after the shot. Cuts unexplained, perspective shifts sudden, and blind spots where cameras should have covered. Some phone recordings were later claimed as removed, corrupted, or flagged. In many cases, clips that briefly circulated were taken down before verification. No explanation was offered as to who removed them or why. The push timeline doesn't match real-time reactions. For example, some witnesses reported apprehending security movement before the official moment of the shot. Others said Robinson was escorted or trailed earlier than acknowledged. None of that appears in press releases or follow-ups. Even the language evolved. Early terms like chaos or scramble gave voix to phrases implying control. References to disarray near the stage vanished from coverage. First-hand crowd accounts were replaced by statements suggesting order was never disturbed. And while online viewers asked where Robinson was when authorities recognized him, or why the scene sealed so swiftly, nearly none of those questions were answered. Instead, every update felt rehearsed, trimmed, stripped of nuance. The issue isn't scarcity of information, it's that the fragments that don't fit are quietly removed. When news broke about Charlie's shooting and the alleged link to Robinson, institutions and major outlets responded in patterns that feel coordinated. Official statements were unusually terse and guarded. Rather than open updates, everything was delivered in closed, absolute terms. No request for public footage, no outreach to attendees who filmed, no acknowledgement of conflicting witness accounts. Even the media's behavior was telling. Within hours, multiple outlets echoed the same wording, reusing lines without independent verification. Each broadcast seemed to draw from one approved script. Not one mainstream platform challenged the timeline or sought clarity on Robinson's position at the moment of the shot. Coverage emphasized calming the public rather than exposing the truth. Instead of dissecting the scene, camera angles, or witness conflicts, they repeated safe terms like under review, handled. It was maintenance, not reporting. When independent journalists and smaller platforms questioned suppressed footage or witness movement, they were met with silence, no corrections, no clarifications, just absence. Authorities declined to explain missing camera angles or justify discouraging bystander recording. No public call was made for raw evidence or statement, as though everyone moved on, assuming the public would too. Online, the narrative was filtered. Posts pointing out discrepancies were quietly removed. Videos covering early eyewitness accounts fell out of reach. Anything diverging from the polished version lost visibility, not because it was disproved, but because it was inconvenient. The chilling implication emerges. Those tasked with informing the public aren't raising questions. They're choosing which questions never see the light. Even after the official narrative settled, major points remain unaddressed, points that cannot be brushed aside with vague language. Why were those closest to Charlie moved instead of interviewed? No public statement confirms that immediate eyewitness accounts were properly collected. Individuals who saw or heard something were redirected, not recorded. Why is there still no clear log of Tyler Robinson's movements before and after the shot? His involvement was acknowledged, yet the timeline around him is fragmented and treated like restricted data. Why are the most vital camera angles unavailable? Cameras were present, devices recorded, yet the very moments that matter most are missing, edited, or withheld. Why did response teams act with certainty before facts were verified? Movement around the site began even before information was gathered, as if outcome was predetermined. Why has no agency officially asked the public for extra video statements or evidence? In any proper investigation, external material is critical, yet here it's perceived as a complicat. Tion, why did the narrative language quietly shift? Terms like panic, scramble, and chaos vanished, replaced by sanitized wording suggesting order. Why were conflicting accounts never publicly addressed? Witnesses across different vantage points recall varying movements and reactions, yet none of those differences were acknowledged. Why were bystander recordings removed without follow-up? If accuracy mattered, those clips would be preserved, not deleted. And the hardest question, if nothing was hidden, why were so many elements removed before the public could verify them? These gaps are not mistakes, they're signs of control. Long before any official press briefing concluded, people were already comparing their experiences with published reports. The mismatch triggered immediate doubt. Attendees murmured over details that vanished from coverage. Some claimed they saw Robinson in a spot the official timeline omits. Others noticed security shift positions minutes before the shot. None of those shifts were ever explained. Online, early posts sounded unsettled, not uncertain. Comments repeated words like strange, quiet, fast. Viewers weren't unsure of what they saw. They were unsettled by how fast everything was sealed and narrated. Then came silence. Videos disappeared. Threads died. Algorithms ceased recommending content that challenged the sequence. Suddenly, speculation didn't fade. It was confined to smaller circles, encrypted chats, niche forums, private groups. People noticed the uniform tone across media reports. Headlines framed the story as though copy-pasted. When questions about Robinson's location, witness access, or missing footage were raised, silence didn't calm. It fueled suspicion. Even those not present saw the fractures, timestamp mismatches, reaction speed differences, visual anomalies, and lack of raw footage. The more polished the narrative became, the less believable it felt. The tipping point wasn't outrage, it was doubt. Doubt in the timeline, doubt in the process, doubt in the notion that nothing abnormal was hidden. When viewers start asking the same questions from different angles and get no response, they don't lose interest, they lose trust. Everything around Charlie's shooting and the handling of Robinson's connection suggests one thing: too many pieces are missing for this to be a closed story. The public was handed a conclusion before facts were fully laid out. Footage exists but remains unseen. Witnesses spoke but weren't heard. Timelines exist but don't align. The closer you look, the more it feels like someone chose what people should believe before anyone could process what happened. And that leads to a darker concern. If details this significant can be sealed, shifted, or erased with such ease, how many other events have been shaped the same way without anyone noticing? This isn't about one name, one shot, or one recorded moment. It's about what happens when those holding evidence choose silence over accountability. Until every missing angle is released, every bystander acknowledged, every unanswered question treated as essential, one possibility remains. Perhaps the truth wasn't lost. Perhaps it was removed. And if that's the case, who decided we should not see it? Don't forget to leave your comment. We will absolutely respond. Your feedback and contributions matter. We stand for justice. We stand for Charlie.